the perfect life, the perfect love, the perfect lie. Abby awakens in a daze with no memory of who she is or how she landed in this unsettling condition. The man by her side claims to be her husband. He's a titan of the tech world, the founder of one of Silicon Valley's most innovative startups. He tells Abby that she's a gifted artist, an avid surfer, a loving mother to their young son, and the perfect wife. He says she had a terrible accident 5 years ago and that, through a huge technological breakthrough, she has been brought back from the abyss. She's a miracle of science. But as Abby pieces together memories of her marriage, she begins to question her husband's motives and his version of events. Can she trust him when he says he wants them to be together forever? And what really happened to her half a decade ago? Beware the man who calls you the perfect wife. You're having that dream again. The one where you and Tim are in Jaipur for Diwali. Everywhere you look, every doorway and window, there are lanterns and candles, firecrackers and fairy lights. Courtyards have become flickering pools of flame, their entrances surrounded by intrinsic designs of colored rice paste. Drums and cymbals throb and sizzle, surrendering to the din and confusion. You surge with the crowd through a market, the stallholders urging platters of sweet on you from every side. On an impulse, you stop at a stall where a woman decorates skin with beautiful Hindi patterns, the smell of sandalwood from her brushes mingling with the acrid, savory cordite from the firecrackers and the aroma of a kaju roasting cashew nuts. As she paints you, deft and quick, a cluster of young men dance past, their faces painted blue, their muscular torsos bare, then come back, dancing just for you, their expressions deadly serious. And then, the final touch. She paints a bindi on your forehead, right between your eyes, telling you how the scarlet dot marks you out as married, a woman with all that knowledge of the world. But I'm not, you protest, almost pulling away, fearful. You're going to offend some local sensibility, and then you hear Tim's laugh, and you see the box he produces from his pocket, and even before he goes down on one knee, right here in the midst of all this noise and mayhem, you know that this is it. He's really going to do it, and your heart overflows. Abby Cullen, he begins. Ever since you erupted into my life, I've known we have to be together. And then you're waking up. Every part of you hurts. Your eyes are the worst. The bright light searing into your skull, the ache in your brain connecting with the stiffness in your neck, soreness all the way down your spine. Machines beep and wire. A hospital? Were you in an accident? You try to move your arms. They're stiff. You can barely bend your elbows. Painfully, you reach up and touch your face. Bandages encase your neck. You must have been in an accident of some kind, but you can't remember it. That happens, you tell yourself groggily. People come around from car crashes not remembering the impact or even how you went in a car. The important thing is, you're alive. Was Tim in the car as well? Was he driving? What about Danny? At the thought that Danny or Tim might have been killed, you almost gasp, but you can't. Some change in the beeping machines, though, has alerted a nurse. A blue hospital uniform, a woman's waist passes at eye level, adjusting something, but it hurts too much to look at her. She's up and running, she murmurs. Thank God, Tim's voice says. So he's alive, after all. And right here by your bedside, relief floods through you. Then his face appears, looking down at you. He's wearing what he always wears, black jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, and a white baseball cap, but his face is gaunt. The lines deeper than you've ever seen before. Abby, he says. Abby. His eyes glisten with tears which fill you with alarm. Tim never cries. Where am I? Your voice is hoarse. You're safe. Was there an accident? Is Danny okay? Danny's fine. Rest now. I'll explain later. Have I had surgery? Later, I promise, when you're stronger. I'm stronger now. It's true. Already the pain is receding, the fog and grogginess clearing from your head. It's incredible, he says. Not to you, but the nurse. Amazing. It's her. I was dreaming, you say, and about when you proposed. It was so vivid. That'll be the anesthetic, you realize. It makes things richer, like the line from that play. What was it? For a moment the words elude you, but then with an almost painful effort, a clunk, you remember. I cried to dream again. Again. Tim's eyes filled with tears. Don't be sad, you tell him. I'm alive. That's all that matters, isn't it? We're all three of us alive. I'm not sad, he says, smiling through his tears. I'm happy. People cry when they're happy too. You knew that, of course, but even through the pain and the drugs, you can tell everything's gonna be all right. Tears. Have you lost your legs? You try to move your feet and feel them, slowly, stiffly, responding under the blanket. Thank God. Tim seems to come to a conclusion. There's something I have to explain, my love, he says, taking your hands in his. Something very difficult, but you need to know right away that wasn't a dream, it was an upload. Your first thought is that you're hallucinating. That this, not the dream about him proposing, is the bit that isn't real. How can it be? What he's saying to you now, a stream of technical stuff about mind files and neural nets, simply make no sense. I don't understand. Are you saying something happened to my brain? Tim shakes his head. I'm saying you're artificial. Intelligent, conscious, but man-made. But I'm fine, you insist, baffled. Look, I'll tell you 3 random things about myself. My favorite meal is salad and soy. I was angry for weeks last year because my favorite cashmere jacket got eaten by moths. I go swimming almost every day. You stop. Your voice, instead of reflecting a rising panic, is coming out in a dull, croaky monotone. A Stephen Hawking voice. The damage to that jacket was 6 years ago, Tim says. I kept it, though. I've kept all your things. You stare at him, trying to get your head around this. I guess I'm not doing this very well. He pulls a piece of paper from his pocket. Here, I wrote this for our investors. Maybe it'll help. FAQ. Q. What is a cobot? A. Cobot is short for companion robot. Studies with prototypes suggest that presence of a cobot may alleviate the loss of a loved one, providing solace, company, and emotional support in the aftermath of bereavement. Question. How will cobots differ from other forms of artificial intelligence? Answer. Cobots have been specifically designed to be empathetic. Question. Will each cobot be unique? Answer. Each cobot will be customized to closely replicate the physical appearance of the loved one. Social media records, texts, and other documents will be aggregated to create a neural file, reflecting their unique traits and personalities. This reminds me of a Black Mirror episode. There's more, much more, but you can't focus. You let the sheet fall from your hand. Only Tim could possibly imagine that a list of factual questions and answers could help at a time like this. This is what you do, you remember. You design artificial intelligence, but that's something to do with customer service, chatbots. That's right, he interrupts. I was working on that side of it, but that was 5 years ago. Your memories are all 5 years out of date after I lost you. I realized bereavement was the biggest need. It's taken all this time to get you to this stage. His words take a moment to sink in. Bereavement? You've just realized what he's trying to tell you. You're saying I died. You stare up at him. You're saying the real me died? What? 5 years ago, and you've somehow brought me back like this? He doesn't reply. You feel a mixture of emotions. Disbelief, obviously, but also horror at the thought of his grief at what he must have been through. At least you were spared that. Cobots have been specifically designed to be empathetic. And Danny, you've missed 5 years of his life. At the thought of Danny, a familiar sadness washes over you. A sadness you firmly put to one side, and that too, both the sadness and the putting aside, feels so normal, so ordinary, that it can't be anything except your own individual emotion. Can it? Can I move? She says, trying to sit up. Yes, it'll feel stiff at first. Careful. You've just attempted to swing your legs onto the floor. They go in different directions, weak as a baby's. He's caught you just in time. 1 foot, then the other, he adds. Shift your weight each in turn. That's better. He holds your elbows to steady you as you head for the mirror. Each cobot will be customized to closely replicate the physical appearance of the loved one. The face that stares back at you above the collar of a blue hospital gown is your face. It's puffy and bruised looking, and there's a faint line under your chin like the strap of those hat soldiers wear on ceremonial parades. But it's still unarguably you, not something artificial. I don't believe you, you say. You feel weirdly calm, but the conviction sweeps over you that nothing he's saying can possibly be true. That your husband, your brilliant, adoring, but undeniably excessive husband, has gone stark, raving mad. He always worked too hard, driven himself right to the edge. Now finally he's flipped. I know it's a lot to take in, he says gently, but I'm going to prove it to you. Look. He reaches behind your head and fiddles with your hair. There's a sucking sound, a strange cold sensation, and then your skin, Your face is peeling away like a wetsuit, revealing the hard white plastic skull underneath. You can't cry, you discover. However great your horror, you can't shed actual tears. It's something they're still working on, Tim says. Instead, you stare at yourself, speechless at the hideous thing you've become. You're a crash test dummy, a store window mannequin, a bundle of cables dangling behind your head like some grotesque ponytail. He stretches back over your face, and you're you again. But the memory of that horrible blank plastic is seared into your mind, if you even have a mind, as opposed to a neural net or whatever he called it. In the mirror, your mouth gapes slightly. You can feel tiny motors under your skin wearing and stretching, pulling your expressions into a rictus of dismay. And now that you look more closely, you realize this face is only an approximation of yours, slightly out of focus, as if a photograph of you has been printed onto the exact shape of the face. It has been printed onto the exact shape of your head. Let's go home, Tim says. You'll feel better there. Home? Where's home? You can't remember. Then, clunk, a memory drops into place. Dolores Street in central San Francisco. I never moved, he adds. I wanted to stay where you'd been so happy. You nod numbly. You feel as if you ought to thank him, but you can't. You're trapped in a nightmare, immobile with shock. He takes your arm and guides you from the room. The nurse, if she was a nurse, is nowhere to be seen. As you walk with painful slowness down the corridor, you glimpse other rooms, other patients in blue hospital gowns like yours. An old lady gazes at you with milky eyes. A little girl with long brown ringlets, turns her head to watch you pass. Something about that movement, just a little farther than it should be, like an owl, makes you wonder. And then the next room contains not a person, but a dog, a boxer, watching you exactly the same way. They're all like me, you realize. All, what was his word? Cobots. They're cobots, yes, but not like you. You're unique. Even here. He glances around a little furtively, his hand on your elbow increasing its pressure, urging you to go faster. You sense there's something he's not telling you, that he isn't supposed to be whisking you away like this. Is this a hospital? No, it's where I work, my company. His other hand pushes incessantly in the small of your back. Come on, I've got a car waiting. You can't walk any faster. It's as if you're on stilts, your knees refusing to bend, but even as you think that your knees, it gets a little easier. Tim, a voice behind you calls urgently. Tim, wait up. Relieved at the chance to pause, you turn to look. A man about Tim's age, but more thick-set, with long, straggly hair, is hurling after you. Not now, Mike, Tim says worryingly. The man stops. You're taking her away? Already? Is that a good idea? She'll be happier at home. The man's eyes travel over you anxiously. His security pass dangling around his neck says Dr. Mike Austin. She should be checked out by my psych team at least. She's fine, Tim says firmly. He opens a door into what looks like a large, open, plain office area. About 40 people are sitting at long communal desks. No one is pretending to work. They're all staring at you. One, a young Asian-looking woman, raises her hand and tentatively applauds. Tim glares at her, and she quickly looks down at her screen. He guides you straight through the office towards a small reception lobby. On the wall behind the front desk is a colorful street art mural framing that words, "Idealism is simply long-range realism." Something about it seems familiar. You want to stop to look more closely, but Tim is urging you on. Outside, it's even brighter. You gasp and shield your eyes as he steers you past a polished steel sign says Scott Robotics. The initial S and R, like two upend infinity symbols toward a waiting Prius. The city, Tim tells the driver. While you struggle to hold your unresponsive limbs into the back, Dolores Street. Once you're both in and the Prius is moving, his hand reaches for you. I've waited so long for this day, Abby. I'm so happy you're finally here. That we're together at last. You catch the driver looking curiously at you in his rearview mirror. As you leave the parking lot, he glances up at the sign, then back at you, and something dawns in his expression. Understanding. And something else as well. Disgust. This is good. I'm interested. The very first we knew of Tim's plan to hire an artist in residence was when we heard him talking to Mike about it. That was typical of Tim. He might exhort all of us to work more collaboratively and openly, but the same directive blatantly didn't apply to him. The same directive. Mike was one of the few people he would sometimes actually listen to on account of them starting Scott Robotics together in Mike's garage almost a decade ago, but still, It might have been Mike's garage, but it was Tim's name on the company. That told you pretty much all you needed to know about the relationship. So, regarding the artist-in-resident proposal, it wasn't as if Tom was discussing with Mike so much as telling him. But it was also typical of Tim that his announcement had to be prefaced by a loud, passionate tirade of what was so stupid and wrong and screwed up about the way we currently did things, even though we were only doing them the way he argued equally passionately for the last time he made us change everything. "We need to wake the fuck up, Mike," he says in his rasping British accent. "We need to get more creative. Look at these people." And here he gestures to all. And here his gesture took in all of us, working away in Scott Robotics' Open Plan HQ, and tell them they're thinking outside the paradigm. They need to be stimulated. They need to be excited, and we're not doing that with free bagels and Pilates. Tim once told a reporter that having an idea about what the future would look like and then waiting for it to happen was like being permanently stuck in traffic. He's not a patient man, but he is the closest thing to a genius most of us have ever worked with. Which is why we're hiring an artist, he added. Her name's Abby Cullen. She's smart. She works with tech. She excites me. We're giving her 6 months. To do what? Mike asked. Whatever the hell she likes. That's the whole point. She's an artist, not yet another time-serving worker drone. If any of us were offended by the description, among our number, we counted quite a few millionaires, veterans of some of the Silicon Valley's most notable startups. None of us showed it. Although we were already wondering how long the free bagels would continue now. Mike nodded. Great, let's get her in. We waited for the cry of "listen up, people" that usually prefaced Tim's announcement, but none came. He had already gone back into his glass-walled cubicle. Many of us, of course, were already typing Abby Cullen artist into our search engine of choice. When you actually work in tech, using Google or Binge would be a bit like a craft food we were drinking Budweiser. So pretty much instantly, we knew the bare facts about her, that she had recently exhibited at SXSW and Burning Man, that she was originally from the South, that she was 24 years old, a redhead, tall and striking, and a surfer, and that her website simply said, "I build artifacts from the future." We had also found and circulated some video clips of her work. 7 Veils was a circle of electric fans pointing inward at one another to create a vortex in which thin stripes of colored silk tumbled and twirled perpetually. Earth, Wind, Fire was a cyclone of flame bouncing like a roly-poly toy atop a gas burner as it battled competing blasts of air. Most spectacular of all was Pixels, a grid of dozen of what looked like ping-pong balls that floated as if on a cushion of air, but also interacted with the gallery visitor. Sometimes the balls seemed to flicker like a shoal of fish. Sometimes they pulsed lazily like water streaming behind a boat, or formed almost recognizable shapes. A head, a hand, a heart. In one clip, a child visiting the exhibition clapped her hands, causing the globes to drop abruptly to the floor before wirily creeping back up, the way a herd of heifers nose up to a hiker. They were beautiful and strange and playful, and although they had no meaning or message you could easily take away, they also had kind of purpose. They expressed something, even if that was something couldn't be put into words. What had they to do with us? We were engineers, mathematicians, coders, developing intelligent mannequins for high-end fashion stores, shopbots. Tim's big idea, the idea that had pulled in nearly $8 million in startup funding over the last 3 years. What did we need with an artist? We didn't know, but we had long ago learned not to question Tim's decisions. He was a visionary, a wonder kind, the whole reason each one of us was at the company in the first place. What Gates was to personal computers, Jobs was to smartphones, or Musk was to electric cars, Tim Scott was to AI, or would be very soon. We idolized him, we feared him, but even those who could not keep up and had to be let go respected him. There were many of the latter. Scott Robotics was not just a business, it was a mission, a first to market blitzkrieg in a war to mold the future of humanity, and Tim was not so much a CEO as a battlefield commander, charging from the front, or very own Alexander the Great. His gangling physique, rockstar cheekbones, and goofy giggle failed to mask his iron determination, a determination he demanded from each of us in return. 20 hours days were so common they were barely worth remarking on. The postdocs fresh out of Stanford, who were his usual hires, felt empowered rather than exploited by the insane work ethic, on which subject his interview technique was legendary. You were ushered into his cubicle where he would be working on emails and waited patiently for him to say, without looking up, "Go." That was your cue to pitch why you wanted to work at his company. Assuming you passed, next came what he was known was the Tim breaker. Sometimes it was a computational question. How many square feet of pizzas are in the US each year? More often it was philosophical. What's the worst thing about humanity? Or practical. Why are manhole covers round? But mostly it was to do with code, such as how would you program an artificial politician? And the answer you were required to give was not just theoretical. Tim expected you to come up with an actual line of working code, one after another, without the use of a pen or paper, let alone a computer. If you did well, it was signaled by a single word, delivered in the direction of the emails he was still working on. Cool. If he said quietly, "That's pretty lame," you were out. His impatience, which was also legendary, was somehow another aspect of his charisma, proof that the mission was time critical, that every second was precious. He even peed quickly. One employee reported after standing next to him at the urinals. The employee, meanwhile, was afflicted with pee shyness. His speech was even faster, curt, precise, bombarding you with the instructions or occasionally invective. Senior managers, or those who very badly wanted to be senior managers, were often noted to have picked up a trace of the same clipped London accent, so different from the languid, questioning inflections of Northern California. It was as if he were a force field that buckled those around him. If Tim looked at you in the eye and said, "I need you to go to Mumbai tonight," you felt exhilarated because you alone had been given a chance to prove yourself. If Tim said, "I'm taking over your assignment," you were crushed. It was something cultish, not for nothing where we known in Silicon Valley as the Scott bots. The mission could be refined, but it could not be challenged. The leader might have his foibles, but he could not be wrong. At costume parties, paradoxically, Tim loved costume parties, where most people went as characters from Star Trek or The Matrix. He went as the Sun King, complete with buckled shoes, frog caught, outside wig, and crown. His background was another part of the legend. The impoverished childhood, the bullying that made him leave school at 11 to self-educate, the growing interest in chatbots, just at the time where people were starting to interact with e-commerce sites on their smartphones. The creation of Otto, a customer service bot that instead of being robotically polite and frustratingly obtuse, was efficient, smart, geeky, and cool, not unlike Tim himself, as many commenters remarked. Otto didn't always spell correctly or use capital letters. He peppered his responses with emojis and witty allusions to nerd culture quotes from South Park, catchphrases from sci-fi movies. When you encountered Otto, you were convinced you'd just been put through to some wizard-level teen genius who would fix your problem from the sheer thrill of it. No one was surprised when Google bought Otto for $60 million. Then at the age of 23, Tim walked out of Google to found Scott Robotics, taking Mike with him. Their first success, put together in the Offerment garage, was Voice, a telephone helpline bot that was consistently ranked higher than human operators. More successes followed. Tim was obsessed by the idea that AI interaction should be lifelike. "One day the keyboard and the mouse will seem as outdated as punch cards and floppy disks do now," was his mantra. Along with, "You don't change the future without changing the rules." The shopbots were a daring progression. Nothing like this had been attempted before. An AI that interacted with people physically in person without the medium of a screen or a phone. But it made good, even brilliant business sense. High-end retail mannequins already cost tens of thousands of dollars. Cells Clark, too, were expensive, given that they often stood around doing nothing. And personal shoppers with a good eye and an exhaustive knowledge of a store's inventory were time-consuming to train. Combining the three was a no-brainer. It was a sector ripe for disruption, and Scott Robotics, our tiny brand, was going to be the first to disrupt it. And now we were to have an artist to help us. Had we known, of course, we would lead. Had one of our expert futurologists been able to predict how things would turn out, we might have been so sanguine about that. But even if we had known, what would we have said? Frankly, it was unlikely. It was not that kind of company where you debated the direction of travel. Tim's silent on the way home. He was never one for small talk, but this is different. He seems almost exhausted. This is what he was like after a big presentation to the investors, you remember. After weeks of living in the office, sweating every detail, he simply collapsed, so drained of energy he could barely speak. For your part, the sense of shock returns. The driver's disgust is nothing to the revulsion and self-loathing you feel. It was what you'd have wanted, Tim says at last. Please believe that, Abs. I know it must feel strange right now, but you'll get used to it. You were always the bravest person I knew. Were you brave? Memories flicker around the edge of your brain, surfing a big wave at Lindemar, welding an artwork, the fiery sparks spitting into the blue lens of your goggles, but then there's nothing. Just fog. You turn and look out the window, avoiding with a shuddering the faint glimmer of your own reflection. San Francisco looks both familiar and new, like a foreign country you're returning to after many years. An exile you don't even remember. The buildings are mostly the same. It's the details that have changed. The smartphones in people's hands that have become larger instead of smaller, the electric bicycles everywhere, the white Priuses that have all but replaced yellow cabs, and the Mission has become even more gentrified. Artisanal coffee shops on every block. Then the driver makes a turn and suddenly you don't recognize anything. One moment everything is familiar, the next fog has taken it away. Why don't I remember this? You say, panicked. Creating memories takes a lot of processing power. I had to be selective. The gaps will fill themselves, eventually. A garbage truck passes in the opposite direction, noisily crunching a plastic bottle under its tires. That's what you'll do, you decide. You'll wait a few days, then throw yourself under a truck. Death would surely be preferable to this repulsive travesty of existence. But even as you think of it, you wonder if you're really brave enough to do that. And if you were, would Tim's technicians simply gather you up and put you back together again like Humpty Dumpty? Again. You realize you still have no idea what happened to you. How did I die? You hear yourself ask. He looks across at you, his face tense. We'll talk about that, I promise. But not yet. It might be too much right now. The Prius pulls up at some electric gates. Behind them, you recognize your house, a handsome white clipboard mansion. Despite the astronomical prices in central San Francisco, you could have lived somewhere even grander if you wanted. Tim's wealth was vast, even by tech standard, but ostentation was never his style. You wonder if the garage still contains the same beat-up Volkswagen. Welcome home, he says softly. The front door locks, sticks, and it takes him a few minutes to get it open. For some reason, that too, the way he hunched, patiently working the key, is familiar. You look around and see a small security camera over the door, another upload. Inside, there's familiarity, but also strangeness, like visiting a house you lived in as a child. I'll show you around, he says reassuringly. Fill in any gaps. The kitchen's first, flooded with sunlight, comfortable, but with a professional gas range. Movable pans jangle gently overhead like some massive copper wind chime. You open a cupboard at random. Inside are spices, not ground, but whole, in precise rows of glass jars, each neatly labeled in your own handwriting. You love to cook, Tim explains. Do you? You try to think of anything you've ever cooked and fail, but then, clunk, it comes to you. All those Instagram pictures, hundreds upon hundreds of them. You even had followers eagerly copying whatever you made. You point at a bowl of spherical objects on the counter, so vibrant they hurt your eyes. What are those? These. He picks one up and hands it to you. These are oranges. The word makes no sense. Orange is a color. Yes, a color named after a fruit. He watches you carefully, like lime and peach. But they aren't orange, are they? You examine the ones you're holding, turning it over curiously in your hand. At least not as orange as carrot, and in hot countries, oranges are green. Something else strikes you. My hair is this color too, but people call it red or ginger, not orange. That's right, but gingers in the color are a fruit. No, it's a root, once associated with the fiery temperate. Clunk, you stop, confused. Did I remember all that, or just guess it? Neither. A smile pushes from the exhaustion from Tim's eye. It's called deep machine learning. Without you even being aware of it, your brain just compared millions of examples in the cloud and came up with the rule for colors and fruit. And the insane thing is, even I couldn't tell you how you did it. That is, I could plug in a screen and see the math happening, but I couldn't necessarily follow it. I tell my employees the A in AI doesn't stand for artificial anymore. It stands for autonomous. You can tell from the way he says it that he's incredibly proud of it. You break through. Part of you wants to bask in his approval, but you can't. All you hear is, you freak. How can you possibly love me like this? You say desperately. For a moment, there's a flash of something fierce, almost angry in his expression, then he softens. Love is not love which alters when an alteration finds. He quotes, Sonnet 116. Remember? We read it at our wedding. 4 lines each in turn, then the final couplet together. You shake your head. You don't remember that, no. It'll come to you. You wonder if he means the memory or the sentiment. My point is, those weren't just empty words to us. You were always unique, Abby, irreplaceable, a perfect wife, a perfect mother, the love of my life. Everyone says that, don't they? But I really meant it. After I lost you, plenty of other people told me I should move on, find someone else to spend my life with, but I knew that was never going to happen, so I did this instead. Was I right to? I don't know, but I had to try, and even just talking to you now for these minutes, seeing you here in our house, hearing you speak makes all those years I've put into this worthwhile. I love you, Abs. I will always love you forever, just like we promised each other on our wedding day. He stops, waiting. You know you should say I love you back, because you do love him. Of course you do, but it's still too raw, too shocking, and right in this moment telling Tim you love him would feel tantamount to saying, yes, this is fine, you did the right thing, my husband. I'm glad you turned me into this freakish, disgusting lump of plastic. It's worth it to be here with you. I too love and worship 3 more than life itself. Shall we continue, he says after a moment when you don't say anything. He leads the way upstairs. You have to hold onto the rail, your legs stamping cautiously at each step. Those were all yours, he says as you pass a huge floor-to-ceiling bookcase. You loved books, remember? And that's Danny's room. The bedroom, he indicates, the first one off the landing, doesn't look much like a child's room. There are no curtains, no carpets, no comics or pictures or toys of any kind, apart from the bed. Only furniture is a small TV and a shelf of DVDs. To anyone else, it might seem Spartan, but to a child like Danny, you know, it's relaxing, or at least less stressful. How's he doing, you ask? Making progress. It's slow, of course, but... Tim leaves the sentence unfinished. Will you recognize me? Tim shakes his head. I doubt it, I'm sorry. You feel a stab of sadness, but then even a normal child might forget their mother after 5 years, let alone a child like Danny. Danny has a childhood disintegrative disorder, also known as Heller syndrome. It is so rare, most pediatricians have never seen a case. Instead, they'll tell you patronizingly that children simply don't reach the age of 4 and that get struck down by profound autism over the course of a few terrifying weeks. That they don't suddenly regress from whole sentences to talking in squeaks and groans and little snippets of dialogue from TV shows, that they don't start urinating on carpets and drinking from toilet bowls, that they don't pull out their own hair for no reason or bite their arms until they bleed. When a child dies, the world recognizes it as tragedy. The parents grieve, but there's also the possibility of a grief lessening one day. But CDD takes your child away and swipes him for a stranger, a drooling, broken zombie who inhabits your child's body in some way. In some way, it's worse than a death, because you can go on loving this beautiful stranger even while you're grieving the sweet little person you lost. Where is he now, you ask? He goes to a great special ed school across town. Cian, she was one of the teaching assistants there until I hired her as a live-in nanny, takes him every morning, then comes back to work with him on his therapy program afterwards. It's not close, but it's the best place for kids like him in this whole state. You've missed so much, you think. Danny's at school, a school you don't even know existed. To him opens another door, and this is the master bedroom. You step inside. It's a large room, dominated by the painting, a self-portrait, one on one wall. The woman in the painting is red-haired, her mid-length braid, dreadlocks almost casually piled on top of her head. Her left ear, the one turned to the viewer, has 3 large studs in it. She's wearing a striped shirt, the lower part of which is covered in colored smears, as if she simply wiped her paintbrush on it as she worked. She looks cheerful, an optimistic, sunny-natured person. On her neck, a tattoo, an elaborate Celtic pattern, disappears under the shirt collar and emerges from one sleeve. You look down at the flesh-toned rubber of your own arm. We can't do tattoos, Tim explains. It would compromise the skin material. He gestures at the picture. Other than that, it's pretty accurate, wouldn't you say? He means you're an accurate copy of the painting, you realize, not the other way around. They must have used a scan of it to construct you. Is the woman in the painting really you? She seems too self-posed, somehow. Too cool, and too confident. You look at the signature, a dramatic swiggle in the left corner. Abby Cullen. You didn't usually work in oils, he adds. It was your wedding gift to me. It took you months. Wow. What did you give me? The beach house, he says matter-of-factly. I had it built for you as a surprise. There's the big garage there used as your main studio. You need space for your projects. As he speaks, he's opening another door, directly opposite the master bedroom. But you worked in here when we were in the city. This is where you painted that self-portrait. The floorboards in this little room are flicked with paint. On a trestle table are jars of dried up paintbrushes and tubes of solidified acrylics and a silver pen in a stand. You go and pick it up, and the barrel is inscribed, Abby, always and always Tim. The ink will have dried by now, I expect, he says. I'll get some more. I'd better start a list. Numbly, you pull out the hospital gown you're still wearing. I like to get dressed. Of course, your clothes are in the closet. He shows you the closet, a walk-in off the main bedroom. The dress is hanging there, lovely, boho chic, casual, but made from beautiful materials and bold, bright colors. You glance at the labels. Stella McCartney, Marc Jacobs, Celine. You had good taste, you think, and a good budget, thanks to Tim. You pick out a loose Indian-style dress, something easy to wear. I'll leave you to it, he says tactfully, stepping out. Remembering that hideous plastic skull, you avert your eyes from the mirror as you pull the gown off, but then you can't help looking. Your body hasn't been this toned for years. You catch yourself thinking, not since you gave birth to Danny. But this isn't a body. These limbs were put together in an engineering bay, your skin color sprayed on in a paintbrush booth. And below the waist, you simply fade into smoothness, as blank and sexless as a doll. With a shudder, you pull the dress over your head. There's a sudden crash from downstairs. The front door slamming open. Feet pound the stairs. Danny, don't run, a female voice says. Don't run, a small voice mumbles. Running. The running feet don't slow down. Danny. Spinning around, you catch a glimpse of dark hair, deep-set eyes, a taunt elfin face as he hurtles down the landing. Maternal love sluices through you. You can't believe how big he is. But of course, he must be almost 10. You missed half his life. You follow him to his room. He's already pulling an armful of toy trains from under the bed. Line them up, he mutters feverishly as he sorts them up, biggest to smallest, placing them precisely against the baseboard. Danny, you say? He doesn't respond. Danny, looking, the woman's voice prompts firmly behind you. Danny does look up then, his gaze passing blankly over yours. There's nothing in it, no hint of recognition that you're even a person, let alone his mother. Great looking, good job. The woman steps past you and crouches next to Danny. She's in her 20s, blonde and cheerful, her hair tied back into a ponytail. High five, Danny. Cian, this is... Tim begins. I know what it is, Cian says, giving you a look even blanker than the one Danny just did. High five, Danny, she repeats. Oh, that's not nice. Without lifting his eyes from the train, Danny flips his hand in her direction. She moves her own hand so he makes contact with it. Good looking, good high-fiving, she says encouragingly. But now we're going to go back and walk upstairs properly. Then you'll get extra time with Thomas. She holds out her hand. When he doesn't respond, she says clearly, stand up and hold my hand, Danny. Reluctantly, he gets up and takes it. Well done. Good standing, she says as she leads him away. She's a very good therapist, Tim says when they're out of earshot. When she joined us, Danny wasn't engaging with anything except food and his trains. Now we're getting about a dozen exchanges a day. That's great, you say, although it still stings. I'm so proud of you both. You say it, but you remember your excitement when the two of you first discovered applied behavior analysis, this way of teaching children with autism that, according to some studies, was even capable of curing them, or at least making them indistinguishable from other kids. If you had known then that 5 years later Danny would be still working on eye contact, would you have had the energy to keep going? You push that thought aside. Of course you would. Any gains, however hard won, are better than none. Danny stamps up the stairs again, more slowly this time, with Cian at his heels. When he reaches his bedroom, she produces a blue train. Good walking, Danny. Here's Thomas. Here's Thomas, Danny echoes as he flops down the lines. The train with the others. Then, without warning, his troubled eyes flickers up to yours. Mo, he says. Mommy, he laughs. Did he just call me Mommy? You say, amazed. Tim's already weeping with joy. You would be too if you could cry. Aww. Should I keep reading? We're 40 minutes in. I think I should leave it to that. But this is a really good book. Why hadn't I started this? This is so good, right? I'm sorry, I started this being like ASMR, but then I just got really excited reading it too, so... But anyways, what do you think about... we already know that something fishy's going on because, it says, like, the perfect wife, and beware the man who calls you perfect wife, the perfect life. Thoughts. Obviously, he killed her. I feel like that's kind of obvious. Or he did something to cause her death, and that's why he brought her back, because, he cannot have someone who's not her. Wait, no, because she has... No, but that's the thing. The thing is, everyone knows her. But wouldn't it be like a plot twist if she had been married to someone that wasn't him? Like another tech dude, and he was envious, so he like stole her memories, and because it's like not real memories, you know, you can fake it. And so she's actually like, oh my god, what if he like killed her actual husband and took, because she has memories of Danny, so what if she like, what if he took her, or like, you know what I mean? There is, oh my, I almost flipped, but then like, what if I accidentally see the ending? There is 400 pages. I don't want to read by accident any spoilers. I just saw the word perfect wife. But yeah, this is really good. I'm really interested about this, especially how it's written. And that was just chapter 1. I like it. It's cool.